All right, let's dive right into this explainer and explore how two nations that supposedly share a common language can actually sound completely different in everyday life. We're looking at English, a language spoken by hundreds of millions globally. Yet the second you cross the Atlantic, everyday vocabulary just undergoes this massive transformation. And we aren't talking about obscure, archaic terms here. We're talking about the words you use to eat, commute, and get dressed every single day. But before we really get going, I want you to ask yourself, which version of English naturally pops into your head to describe the world around you? If you were to walk out your front door right now, what words would you use to describe the cars on the street, the clothes on your back, or the snacks in your bag? Depending on what media you consume, where you grew up, or even how you were taught, you might actually be mixing and matching these vocabularies without even realizing it.
To really understand this transatlantic divide, we're going to look at 17 everyday word pairs. But we're not just going to read a boring list top to bottom. Instead, we'll break these pairs down into bite-sized thematic chunks. It's going to help us really see the patterns in how our daily lives are labeled so differently.
Okay, first up, Section 1, Food, Fun, and Games, the vocabulary of leisure.
It's honestly fascinating how we define our time off. When it's time to ditch work and travel, the British go on holiday, whereas Americans pack their bags for a vacation. And when it comes to the most popular sport on the planet, well, the terminology is famously divided. A pitch in the UK hosts football, while an American field is home to soccer.
Moving on to sugary treats, notice how the terminology totally shifts here. If you've got a sweet tooth in London, you'll be asking for sweets and maybe a biscuit with your tea. But jump across the pond to New York, you're hitting the aisle for candy and reaching into a jar for a cookie. It's literally the exact same sugar rush, just packaged in entirely different words. And to wrap up our snacks, let's talk about that classic salty craving. You know, that satisfying crunch from a thinly sliced fried potato. Well, that's known as crisps in British English. But if you're placing an order in American English, you're asking for a bag of potato chips. So, the big takeaway here is that whether you're snacking or playing sports, the vocabulary just completely transforms. Our downtime, our hobbies, our pantry staples, they form this crazy linguistic dividing line. Whether you're enjoying a holiday with biscuits and crisps after a game of football, or a vacation with cookies and potato chips after playing soccer, you are describing the exact same human experiences. Now, think about this for a second. If you were to walk outside right now and needed to check your engine or maybe load some groceries into the back of your car, what words instinctively come to mind for those specific parts? That brings us to Section 2, Hitting the Road. Let's look at transportation vocabulary. When it comes to fueling up and spotting large vehicles on the highway, the differences are super stark. To get the engine running, the British pump petrol, which, is derived from the word petroleum. Americans, on the other hand, just shorten gasoline to gas. And when you're cruising down the highway and a massive heavy goods vehicle blows past you, a British driver spots a lorry, while an American driver is passing a truck. Looking specifically at the anatomy of a car, we see another distinct split. The metal cover protecting your engine, that's the bonnet in the UK, but the hood in the US. And the storage compartment at the back? That's the boot in Britain, but the trunk in America. It's kind of funny, because both sets of words originally drew inspiration from items of clothing in storage, like wearing a bonnet on your head or packing a literal trunk for a trip. They just chose completely different items to use as their metaphors. This perfectly captures how road trip vocabulary changes depending on where you're standing. I mean, think about it. If you tell an American mechanic to put the petrol in the boot of the lorry, they're going to look at you like you're speaking an entirely different language. And, well, essentially, you kind of are. All right, keep your current outfit in mind as we step into our final and, honestly, largest category of the day. How would you describe your clothes to someone over the phone right now? Welcome to Section 3, Home, Clothes, and Life. Everyday Essentials. Looking at clothing, the differences are pretty striking. Starting from the bottom up, the British wear trousers, while Americans wear pants. When the temperature drops, a British person pulls on a knitted jumper, whereas an American grabs a sweater. And for your morning run, you're lacing up trainers in the UK, but sneakers in the US. Now let's look at where we actually live and how we get around our buildings. When navigating residential spaces, the British live in a flat, a term that historically refers to a living space on a single, flat level. Americans, however, reside in an apartment. And to get up to those higher floors, a British resident takes the lift, while an American resident rides the elevator. Rounding out our daily life, we see direct swaps across the board.
Throwing something away? In the UK, it goes straight in the rubbish bin, but in the US, it's garbage or trash. For infants, a British parent changes a nappy while an American reaches for a diaper. And finally, when young adults pursue higher education, they head off to university in Britain, but they go to college in America.
These distinct linguistic flavors brilliantly illustrate just how deeply these differences permeate our day-to-day existence. From the clothes we put on in our flat or apartment to what we throw in the rubbish or trash, these aren't just vocabulary words. They're literally the fundamental building blocks of how we communicate our domestic routines.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Which side of this linguistic divide naturally slips into your everyday conversations? Do you find yourself using a mix of both, depending on who you're talking to, or are you strictly set in one column? The English language is constantly evolving, and these 17 pairs are just a brilliant reminder of how adaptable and diverse human communication truly is. Keep an ear out today. You might be surprised by which words you and the people around you are actually using.